This insect has a larva straight from a sci-fi movie. Welcome back to Bug of the Week Part 9, brought to you by Lil Dudes Insect Academy. And if you're new here, consider subscribing and dropping a like, maybe even commenting down below. Also, check out our website and our social media down below as well. But, yeah, Episode 9, I've really enjoyed making these videos so far. So if you've missed any, go to our playlist, Bug of the Week, and you can check out all the other episodes that I've done in the past few weeks. So I'm super excited for the next few episodes, but let's just jump right into it. The order of Neuroptera contains lacewings, which I've actually featured in a previous episode, and also these guys, Antlions. Antlions are in the family of Myrmeleontidae, which contains about 2,000 species being found in most parts of the world, with greater diversity in hotter and drier climates. And unlike my average format for an episode, I'm actually going to go over the adult forms of these insects first. Adult antlions greatly range in size from less than an inch to up to 6 inches in wingspan. They have 2 pairs of long, narrow, translucent wings paired with a long, slender abdomen, and these insects are often confused for the dragonfly relative, the damselfly, and the main telltale sign of an antlion is their short, clubbed antennae. Now, adult antlions feed on flower nectar and pollen, often accidentally pollinating plants in the process, though this isn't really their intention, and they're not quite as efficient pollinators as like bees and ants and wasps are. Although antlions don't live very long as adults, they are actually mostly nocturnal most of the time and can't typically be seen during the day. Like many other insects, the adult female antlions use an ovipositor to lay their eggs in dry, hard-packed substrate, and this is actually where the insects get interesting, and that is their larval stage. The larvae of these insects are actually super bizarre and weird-looking. They have sharp, sickle-like mandibles, and legs which aren't much good for walking, and a shovel-shaped abdomen, which is super unique, especially for a larvae, because they typically, larvae have more round, rotund bodies versus a flat shovel shape. And like I said, their legs aren't very efficient for walking, so what do the antlion's larvae use them for? Well, the answer to this is actually really crazy. So using their shovel abdomen, they dig around in the dirt, excavating a funnel-shaped pit, often measuring 1 to 2 inches deep and 1 to 3 inches wide. They actually do this by heaping the dirt onto their square-shaped head and flinging it out of the top of the pit. And so you're probably asking yourself, why would they do this? Why would they go through all of this trouble just to dig this little trench? Well, once the pit construction is complete, the antlion larvae can nestle itself into position, and the antlion buries itself in the bottom of the pit with only its large mandibles protruding from the surface. So at the bottom you can see these 2 little mandibles sticking out, and that's all you can see. Their body is completely submerged. Now, I mentioned that adult antlions only feed on pollen and nectar, so why would they do this? Why would they bury themselves? Well, the larvae actually are insectivores, only feeding on other small insects or ants, hence the name antlion. So when an unlucky ant walks by, it begins to slip into the pit, and the antlion instantly begins to flick sand and dust at the ant to make it slip up more, sliding to the bottom of the pit, where a hungry pair of jaws are patiently waiting for its next meal. So a very unlucky ant will walk by, slip in, and instantly get eaten up by this antlion larvae. And the crazy thing is, when they metamorphosize into adults, they only feed on pollen and nectar, which is, it happens with some insects, but typically a insect will metamorphosize and still feed on generally roughly a similar thing to what they did when they were larvae. So, for example, caterpillars, they will feed on a leaf of a host plant when they're caterpillars, and then they'll metamorphosize into a butterfly, and the butterfly will feed from the nectar of that same host plant. Similar thing with beetle larvae. So beetle larvae or grubs will feed on like decaying plant matter or things like that, and then the adults will feed on sometimes decaying plant matter, sometimes fruit, sometimes pollen. So if you think about this, they typically don't go from carnivore to herbivore as an adult. Like, that doesn't happen very often, and vice versa. So this is really unusual for an insect and super bizarre. You'd think the adults would also feed on, you'd think they'd also be carnivorous or maybe insectivores as well, but they don't do that. So it's super bizarre and weird and fairly unusual. Another interesting thing is that the majority of the antlion's life is actually spent as the larvae. So when they metamorphosize into an adult, they can then mate and start the cycle all over again. So they're not really flying around and eating nectar and pollen very long. So I guess they get most of their protein as a larvae, eating ants and small insects and whatnot. Now you might be thinking to yourself that you've kind of heard of this before, and if it seems familiar, it's actually because you've likely seen it before. The Sarlacc monster from the Star Wars films was actually heavily inspired by the antlion, living at the bottom of a pit and swallowing whatever unlucky soul happens to slip in. So with that, I hope you all enjoyed this episode learning about the antlion. I know they're super cool to me because I've seen them in the wild. I saw them in Panama. They're super cool to see the little trenches with the little tiny bug on the bottom. And it's also really cool to see their feeding behavior when something slips in. But I thought it was super cool that the Sarlacc monster was inspired by the antlion. Super cool to learn that kind of stuff about the bug world. And there's stuff like that everywhere in sci-fi, in fantasy. All kinds of things are inspired by things and animals and insects in the real world. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Leave a like. Please subscribe, and I can't wait for next week. So with that, I will see you all next week, and keep on bugging.